I'm Rustin Spatz. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a member of some group somewhere. I don't know. Well, actually, I'm a member of the South Dixie virtual group.
That's right.
Yeah. So you can catch us. Every day we got tons of Zoom meetings. I go to 3 of them every day. And we got a workshop on Saturday. And a live again meeting. If you're into that kind of stuff on Friday nights, we got a lot of.
Where is it?
What?
Zoom.
Where is it?
On Zoom.
Only Zoom?
What do you mean only Zoom? We got like 100 people at the workshop. We got people from all over the world. Where is it? You got to send me an email, and I will send you a schedule of all the meetings, including the workshop, which is only 3 hours. I'm sure you guys can take it. The live again is 3 hours too. It's a 3-hour meeting.
And we barely scratched the surface.
I think, and they won't leave.
Right.
We're done with 3 hours. They want to stay and keep on talking. These are the kind of people that'll stay sober for 40 years. Okay, you guys wouldn't be interested. Okay, so here's the deal. So I actually have. Sheldon couldn't believe it. I have conference approved material here. He says, "Are you really gonna?" Yeah, I am, just for that. But, before I go off the reservation, start reading from scripture or something. But in any event, just to piss you off. But I was talking to Jimmy. I said, how long have I been doing this? He says, I have been doing a step series every year at this group for over 25, maybe 30 years. Yeah, I tell you that. And I can tell you this, 98% of the people that attended those meetings never made it to 20 years. I just don't get nervous, but it's pretty much the truth, You think I'm kidding, right? I'm not kidding. You're going to find out why I'm not kidding. This is going to be a fun meeting. Okay, so let's start off this way before I get into the conference. You guys believe in principles, not personalities? Well, then don't worry about the personalities. Don't worry about that stuff. Look for the principle. So there's this story in the Bible. You don't have to worry, it's the Bible. But, it's a story. It applies to what we're going to talk about here. So I think it applies pretty good. Several thousand years ago, there was this guy named Philip. He was, quote, an apostle. That means he did a lot of step series and stuff all over the place, And he's walking along the road, and there's this guy in a carriage being held up by guys. Some guys know this story, and he's a eunuch. I'm not going to go into the eunuch thing. It's a whole story. But he was like a big shot in some other country there, and they had just come from Jerusalem. So the eunuch guy is reading something from the Old Testament, the book of Isaiah, which you had to be really rich to have one of those things. They didn't have printing presses. You had a book of Isaiah, somebody wrote it out. You had thousands and thousands of shekels, whatever the hell they were using back then. So he's reading this book of Isaiah. It's Isaiah chapter 53. Some of you are familiar with that, some of you aren't. Very important chapter in the Old Testament. And so the eunuch hears a voice from God. The Holy Spirit says, go up to that guy. Go up to that guy. He's reading the Bible. It's like, it's almost like if you were like on an airplane and sitting there, and all of a sudden you saw somebody reading the big book. There's a guy, there's another out. So you want to somehow start a conversation. You're in the airport, somebody's reading the big book. You want to comment, hey, what are you reading there? So go up and talk to that guy. You probably have some in common. So he goes up to the guy and he says this. He says, what are you reading there? And he says, I'm reading the book of Isaiah. He shows it to him. I'm reading the book of Isaiah. And he says this. He says, do you understand what you're reading? And the guy says, how can I? I have no one to teach me. How can I? I have no one to teach me. There's another saying that I like because it's true. It's true in my life. I've seen it in other people's lives, maybe in your life. A man can see something 999 times and see it the 1,000th time and see it for the first time. Man can hear something 999 times and hear it the thousandth time and hear it for the first time. You'll find if you hang around here for decades, you know, there are going to be lines, a sentence. You're going to read one night when you're 20 years sober and you're feeling particularly down and out, and you pick up the big book. You're going to read a line, one sentence in the big book that you've heard 1,000,000 times, and all of a sudden a light bulb's going to go off and it's going to apply exactly to what you're going through right now. And you're going to see it for the first time when for 20 years you never even saw it. And so I want to talk to you about a couple of paragraphs in the big book. And you know, I'm reading a couple of things because you guys have read the big book? You guys have read the big book?
Yes.
This is audience participation, for God's sakes. Have you read the big book?
Yes.
Well, you think you've read the big book. I mean, I believe you read it. I read it, you know what I mean? But how come I look at it now and I say things I've never seen before? I'm in my 45th year of sobriety.
Yes.
How come I read it now and I see things in the big book now that I didn't see when I had 30 years? I just didn't see it. So I'm gonna give you an example because there's some stuff in there that has to do with that line that the eunuch said. How can I if I have nobody to teach me? So there may be actually gold. There may be a gold mine in there of something that will change your life that you don't even know about. You just sort of look at it a different way. Maybe you look at the whole disease a different way. By the way, let me read you a couple of goofy things just for laughs and giggles. On page 123 of the 12 and 12, talks about alcoholics. You know what it says about alcoholics? It says, most psychiatrists agree that alcoholics are childish, emotionally sensitive, and grandiose. Except for people that go to 12-step meetings at the 12-step room in Fort Lauderdale.
When you're speaking.
When I'm speaking, exactly. You know? So here, let me read you. Now, here's something interesting. Here's an interesting deal right here. Let me find this. This is now Bill Wilson. By the way, all this ties in. This all ties into the 7th step. We're gonna see, what do I got? How much time do I got?
2 hours.
Okay. Okay. This all ties into the 7th step. So Bill Wilson got to around 18 or 19 years, and he started using LSD. Now, I'm not putting down Bill Wilson. I'm not telling something out of school because he told everybody in the world about this, okay? He just found a need, you know, like John Kay, who was a good friend of mine at 11 years. He started using Xanax. He went to a psychiatrist. There's a gazillion people in AA that get to a certain point in their life, and they got 5 years, 10 years, everything, and they're just not feeling that great or something like that, and a little depressed or something. So they go to psychiatrist and says, oh, I understand and they're going to meetings and they're doing, oh, you know what you need? You need some Xanax. You need, whatever the flavor of the month is that Sizer is, you know, and they get a little something and then they end up drinking, you know, down the road, or they end up hooked on pills or something. Go figure, you know what I mean? So I'm not standing up and going against psychiatry or any of that stuff. I'm just telling you it happens all the time in AA. You know what I mean? Where because the drinking, this is right out of the big book, the drinking is only a symptom of the disease. The real dis-ease for you in this world, which y'all are experiencing, by the way, right now in your lives, even though you're not drinking, centers in your mind. That's all this crap about restoring you to sanity. See, after you stop drinking, then they work on the real disease to restore you to sanity. That is to say, you're crazy. You understand? So God only knows what the hell you're hearing me say right now. I know what I'm saying. I have no idea what the hell you're hearing. You know what I mean? But I'm going to do my best to slug through this deal, okay? That's the deal. So Bill Wilson, after he went through this terrible bottom and this whole thing, and You can read. He wrote an essay on it called "The Next Frontier." It was published in the Grapevine. Emotional sobriety, because he took a deep dive at around 18, 19 years, almost drank again, used the LSD and everything like that, and he sort of came out of it, and he said, let me tell you what happened to me, okay? You might want to familiarize yourself with that. For you guys who are like got 5, 10, 15, 20 years and actually think you're okay, you might want to check it out, okay? Just for the heck of it, since you love Bill Wilson so much and the Big Book and all that stuff, I want to check out down the road what's going on. So I'm going to read you, it's a 2-page essay, and I'm going to read you like the first paragraph, just for laughs and giggles, okay? It's called The Next Frontier, Emotional Sobriety, Bill Wilson. It was published in the Grapevine in 1958. It says, this is Bill Wilson. I think that many... That's okay. Whatever. This is AA, you know. I think that many old-timers, what would have been an old-timer? If you had 15 years and he's got one, that's somebody with 12 or 13 years. I don't know. I think many old-timers who have put our AA booze cure, anybody know what booze is? It's alcohol. I think that many old-timers who have put our AA alcohol cure, you know, don't drink, go to meetings, don't drink even if your ass falls off. There's those things so bad that drink can't make it. All the crap you hear at the AA problem meetings where they talk about the problem, don't drink no matter what. I think that many old-timers who have put our AA alcohol cure to severe and successful tests, the successful, still find that they often lack emotional sobriety. So let me translate that. It means we got a lot of people here that don't drink and they're picking up medallions, but they're fucking crazy. They're not happy with their sobriety. They feel crummy. And they're probably going to drink down the road, like I almost did. You know, and that's the translation. That's my translation. You know, you can think of it any way you want. You know, it's like, you know, how can I know what I'm reading if I don't have somebody to talk to me about it? Okay? So the statistics used to be, I don't know if this is true or not, but from my point of view, this is what I see in AA. This is what I actually see. But I don't know everybody in AA. I don't know every group. And I've gone to 40,000 meetings, I've spun 100, but that doesn't mean anything. But what it used to be, what the statistic I heard was that 1/2% stay sober for more than 15, 20 years. That is in a group of 200, where we have about 150, 200 here. In a group of 200 people that come into AA, one person stays sober. So out of this group, you got like one guy or gal. That's it. Statistically, I'm not talking about you guys. Don't get all upset. Don't get childish on me. You know what I mean? Oh, and I am sober. So I'm the, and you are. So these guys are shit out of luck. You know what I mean?
They're all
statistically, you know. It's bullshit. I wouldn't even worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm probably crazy. You know what I mean? So let me read you something about in the Big Book, the book that you guys said you said you read this, right? You guys just I said you read the Big Book, so I'm gonna read you something. I'm gonna read you 2 paragraphs. The first paragraph is about a guy who can't stop drinking. Do we have any people here who reached the point in their life where they couldn't stop drinking? Okay. Here's the first paragraph. The less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society's envision for you. The less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society, from life itself. As we became subjects of King Alcohol, shivering denizens of his mad realm, the chilling vapor that is loneliness settled down. It thickened, ever becoming blacker. Some of us sought out sordid places, hoping to find understanding, companionship, and approval. Momentarily we did. Then would come oblivion and the awful awakening to face the hideous four horsemen. Terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. Unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand. Anybody here who used to be a drinker understand that paragraph?
Yes.
Have you read that before?
Yes.
You ever been to that place?
Yes.
Okay, here's the next paragraph. Comes right afterwards. Now this paragraph is about an alcoholic who quit drinking and is excited and happy because he won the game and he's not drinking. He doesn't miss it, okay? This is his story. Now and then a serious drinker, being dry at the moment, says, I don't miss it at all. Feel better, work better, having a better time. Sounds pretty good to me. As ex-problem drinkers, we smile at such a Sally. I don't know who Sally is, but I mean, whoever that is, they're smiling at her. We know our friend, the happy guy who's beat this thing, doesn't drink anymore. We know our friend is like a boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. He fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything to take a half dozen drinks and get away with them. He will presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. Someday he will be unable to imagine life either with or without alcohol. Then he will know loneliness, such as few do. He will be at the jumping off place. He will wish for the end. What's the difference? What's the difference? What's the fucking point? What are we doing here? The guy that couldn't stop drinking knew loneliness as few do, the four horsemen. The guy who stopped drinking was excited about stop drinking. He got to the same exact place. 1/2 of 1%. I don't know, it hasn't hit you yet. What are you going to do when you get 15 years and you start drinking? Or when you get 20 years and you start drinking? Or when you got 5 years and you start drinking? Oh, that ain't going to happen to me. I'm going to continue to go to meetings. What about that line in the big book that says, there will be a point in every alcoholic's life where his only defense against the first drink will come from a higher power, will come from God. What about that part? Does it say, what does it say? There will be a point in every alcoholic's life they'll have no defense against the first. Does that mean it just happen? That only happens one time? No. Could it happen 10 times? Could it happen once every year? Could it happen like a gal I heard today who said, who actually got hit with it's only like, maybe a few months sober, and her husband says, I want a divorce? Could it happen then? Could it happen when you got 10 years and you have no money in the bank and they tell you you're fired? Could it happen then? Because life keeps on going on, you know what I mean? Shit keeps on happening. What about when they tell you got cancer, or when your wife dies, or your husband? Could it happen? Have you guys noticed that no matter what goes on in your life, even if you're sober and you're going to meetings, that FP&L still wants to get paid every month? And your landlord or your mortgage company wants money? You ever have money? You ever worry about money? You ever have anxiety over that? I know the big book says fear of people and their judgment and of financial insecurity will leave you. So when does that happen? Oh, so it happened to you like 500 times already? And you didn't drink, right? What's going to happen the 501st time? What's going to happen the 501st time when that happens and your husband, your wife says, I want a divorce? And then the doctor says you got cancer, like 3 hits in a row. Or maybe this just doesn't apply. Maybe even though it's in the big book and the 12 and 12 and all that stuff, maybe it doesn't apply to you. There's just some other guy at some other meeting. You know what I mean? Maybe that's the deal. Maybe you guys are sort of immune. You're like special alcoholics. You know, maybe that's it. Maybe that's it for me. So here's step 7. What does that have to do with step 7? Oh, here's step 7. Let me read a part of step 7. I'm just going to read the first two paragraphs. It says, step 7 is humbly, and remember step 6 is where we separate out the men from the boys. We separate the children. The children stay in kindergarten, because A is a spiritual kindergarten. You've heard that, right? So we got all these childish alcoholics. What do they call them? Childish, emotionally sensitive, and grandiose. We got all the children that are, still having toga parties and picking up medallions and having a good time and saying, feel better, look better, have a better time. And then somewhere along the line, you get these adults, these grown-ups, whatever they are, Stay away from those guys. They're going to say shit to you you're not going to like, And so you got these adults. And so the children stay over in the children's section, you know what I mean? And where there's no talking about God or stuff like that, at least not in a serious way. You know what I mean? And if somebody talks about the God, they've got these people that stand by the door to attack afterwards and say, don't say that shit, you're killing newcomers. And so everybody knows that you only go so far. You say like higher power, you're just very careful about that stuff. But then there's another meeting going on somewhere else. There's another meeting going on someplace else where the adults go. You understand? There are meetings in AA, you guys may not know about, where the adults hang out. They got 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And they hang at those meetings. And anybody can come to those meetings, but it's different than the meetings that you're used to going to. You see? So here's step 7. So what does that have to do? What's the difference between an alcoholic who comes in the rooms initially because he can't stop drinking and he hits, what do they call, bottom? Hits bottom. And an alcoholic who is sober for 5, 10, 15 years and is not happy with their sobriety and they think they're doing okay and they're going to meetings and then all of a sudden they're drinking again. Or maybe they go to a doctor and they start taking Xanax. And nobody knows about it because they're not telling anybody and the next thing you know they're drinking. What's the difference between those two guys? And quite frankly, it may be the same guy. The guy who came in and hit bottom, that actually hit bottom. You know what I mean? And stopped drinking and then 5 years later. Because we may even have people in here that came in to AA before. Usually I see this in groups. And it may be the third time for them. They came in, and they came in because they were serious. They don't keep on coming back here. You've heard that. This is my 4th time back here, and I had 2 years, I had 5 years, I had 7 years, and everything like that. People like that don't come back here because they're not serious. People who come back here after that are serious. But they just get to a certain point. And all of a sudden, down they go. So what's the difference? What's the key? What is there? Is there something we can see or put our finger on, we might think about, that makes a difference there? Because that would be, it's great being sober, right? It's great picking up a 1-year medallion or 2 or 5 or 10. What'd be really great is to find out why people drink again. Why people drink again. Now, I know they tell you they drink because they stopped going to meetings. Well, it is true that many people who stop going to meetings drink. But there are a lot of people that go to meetings that drink. There are a lot of people like Bill Wilson who wrote the book What the Meetings and Taught the Steps that was using LSD and almost drank. So well, how about this? Why do people, if we know that people who don't go to meetings drink, and if that's the primary thing that people are told in AA, which is not true, okay, then if everybody knows that, then why do people after 5 or 10 or 15 years stop going to meetings? Isn't that really the question you want to ask yourself? Wouldn't it be good to have a hint on that? I don't know. I mean, I'm doing what you paid me for, right? I'm supposed to talk about steps? Okay. Yeah. So this is different than, well, I had a resentment the other day with my mother and this is not that shit. Okay? So step 7. Humbly, so now we've already separated the men from the boys and everything like that, so now we go to step 7 because there's something else that goes on. It says, humbly asked him to remove our shortcoming, and this is what it says. So, and I like reading this because I may see it differently than some people. I mean, a lot of people maybe see it. It says, since this step so specifically, I can promise you this. When I read these paragraphs to you, whatever I'm going to say to you about these paragraphs, for the first 10 years, I had no clue as to whatever I'm telling you now, I didn't know about it when I had 10 years. I mean, it is possible to read this book and be like the guy who was reading Isaiah. Do you know what you're reading? No, how can I unless somebody shows me? It's possible to read all these books and have no idea what you're actually reading, what it's actually saying. One day somebody tells you something at a meeting, you say, oh shit, I didn't even understand that. Since this step so specifically concerns itself with humility. Oh, by the way, I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for 50 years. And if I'm representing somebody and they find him with a knife in his hand, standing beside the corpse of a man or a woman having been stabbed 50 times with blood all over him, who says, I did it and I'm glad I did it. I'm a serial killer. And he hires me. I look the judge in the eye and he says, what do you plead? And I say, not guilty, Judge. And I'm as sincere as a heart attack. And if you pay me a lot of money, I'm fucking sincere as hell. You know what I mean? I start believing it myself. You call that evidence? That is to say that just because I'm going to talk to you about humility, don't make the mistake of believing I have any idea what the fuck it is or that I have that. You know what I mean? Because I can talk about shit. You know, you pay me enough money, I'll talk about shit I have no idea what's about. And you'll say, hey, that guy sounds like he knows what he's saying. So that's why I'm going to read you this. So, you know, you can't say, well, that guy's full of grace. He says, no, he read it out of the book. And you must be, you know. It says, so this step so specifically concerns itself with humility. So if we're going to talk about the seventh step, you're going to have to find out what humility is. We should pause here to consider what humility is and what the practice of it can mean. So most of you, oh, this is great, it's about humility. I usually, at this point in time, give my world-famous talk on humility. But, well, it's true, you know, but I unfortunately, I never do it with a group this small, you know, so. Indeed, the attainment of greater humility is the foundation principle of each of A's 12 steps. Did you know that every single step has one common denominator to keep you and get you humble? Because I'm an arrogant bastard on my best day. I think I know everything. I know everything. Except, unfortunately, that's all I knew. I didn't know how to stay sober, keep a marriage together. I didn't know how to be a decent human being, but I knew everything else. You know? Indeed, the attainment of greater humility is the foundation principle of each of A's 12 steps. So, I mean, if that's true, it'd be a real good idea to understand whether you're humble, whether you're not humble, what humble is, or what humility is. For without some, you see, because you can do the steps till the cows come home. The 4th step and the 5th step and go to meetings and everything like that and sponsor people. What if you're not humble? What if I ain't getting on my knees? I ain't praying to God. You know, that's your deal. It's not my deal. You have your program, I have. What if you're not humble? No, it's God as I understand him. Well, what if you, as you understand him? You mean using your brain? Oh, is that what you want? You want the God you understand? That makes you feel good? Well, everybody's reading St. Francis prayer. Why don't we figure out who's his God? Why don't we take his God? He's a pretty sharp God. What about Bill Wilson? What about Dr. Bob? Let's figure out who's. Why don't we, instead of using my insane brain, because my God sort of looks like me. He understands me. He appreciates me. He's sweet. He's nice. He would never hurt me. What if you're wrong about that? What if the real God would beat the shit out of you? Why do bad things happen to good people? What if the real God in order to make you non-childish and mature you, would just beat the living shit out of you, take the money away from you, take the husband or the wife away from you, give you cancer? What if he'll do whatever he can do to keep you on the right road? What if every time what if he would put you on your knees for drinking just to get you to the point where you'd ask for help and come into AA? And what if it is true that the 12 and 12 says that it's easy to rest on our laurels, to stop working and rest on our laurels, but we're heading for trouble? What if you start resting on your laurels? What if it's true the big book says that we're undisciplined? And so God disciplines us. So how would God discipline us? How would he get us if we start feeling like big shots or grandiose or something like that, and we don't have to go and all this sort of stuff, and we're on the wrong path? How would he what would he do? Fire you? Get you fired? Take away the money? Take away the girl? Take away the guy? Give you can't? What would he do to get you on your knees again, so you're not such a big shot? He wouldn't do that. A loving God wouldn't do that to me. Well, maybe that's exactly what a loving God would do. To his kids. I don't know. Indeed, the attainment of, the whole book was based upon James, the Apostle James. The 3 books we found absolutely essential were 1 Corinthians 13, Sermon on the Mount, the book of James. Book of James says, rejoice when you have trials of many kinds. Because when you have trials, when they put you through trials, if you persevere and you look to God, and you bend your knee to God while you're going through the trials, your faith will mature. You know what? Doesn't it say in the big book, we don't want to put down money, property, prestige, and romance, everything, but that kills us. It says we never valued or understood the idea of suffering. And then we finally see our eyes were open to the extreme value of suffering. How do you know that after you come into alcoholics, what did it say? You hit bottom? No, we're going to talk about hitting bottom. Indeed, the attainment of greater humility is the foundation principle of each of A's 12 steps. Without some degree of humility, no alcohol can stay sober at all. Some degree of humility. That's like when you first come in, feel better, look better, having a better time. Nearly all A's have found, too, that unless they develop a much more of this precious quality than may be required just for sobriety, physical sobriety, they don't have much of a chance of becoming truly happy. And when you're not happy with sobriety, you're back in law. You're back in that second paragraph. Without it, they cannot live much useful purpose, or in adversity, we are able to summon the faith that can meet any emergency. So here's the deal. I was a guy who used to drink and drive all the time. Every Friday night, 8, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, if I was driving anywhere, I was drunk. And I don't know how many people were drinking drivers. I always thought I drove better when I was drinking, and I don't know, I thought I drove, I was just looser, you know what I mean? And I just could drive faster and weave around things and stuff. And so every once in a while, did this ever happen to you? Every once in a while, I would wake up and I'd find myself in a car. And it was going like 70, 80 miles per hour on I-95. And I'd look around to see who was driving. And it was fucking me. And I don't know if that's ever actually happened to you. Now, when that happens, and I didn't remember how I got there, how I got even in the car, and I didn't even remember anything before I woke up on I-95. And when that happens to you, has that happened to anybody else here? When that happens to you, you get the shit scared out of you. And let me tell you something, you stay awake until you get home. You stay awake until you get home.
Bug-eyed.
Yeah, you get, you know what that is? That's a microbottom. That's a microbottom. That's God scaring the shit out of you. Yeah. trying to get you to understand something about yourself. And most of us don't get it. But what happened to me was there came a time where I was, where I hit a serious, wanting to kill myself, life was over bottom. And I got on my knees and gave my life to God, gave my life to the Lord. But I continued to drink. And about a week or two later, I got into a bad accident. I almost killed myself and almost killed another person because I was driving a car, but I didn't know I was driving. I was in one of these things where, I was driving, but I wasn't there. You understand? I went through an intersection, almost killed myself and almost killed somebody else. I woke up in the hospital on a gurney. I said, God, help me. And something happened. And apparently, those two things that happened to me was whatever it was that got me to the point where I bent the knee. You know what I mean? In other words, I was so scared. It was such a major thing. You understand what I'm saying? That somebody came to me from Alcoholics Anonymous. He talked to me and all that stuff. I'm not going to go through all that stuff. I ended up coming to AA. And a month after I had initially asked God to come into my life, I had my last drink. I haven't had a drink in, now 44 plus years. You know what I mean? And but here's the interesting thing. I know they say you got to hit bottom and do it 100% or something. But here's the interesting thing. Just like it says in the 12 and 12, it's easy to let up on a program of action and rest in your laurels, but you head for trouble you do. And it says that we're delusional, our alcoholic life seems our only normal life. Well, and remember, a non-alcoholic life is a life of rigorous honesty. A non-alcoholic life is you lie to yourself. You lie to yourself about who you are and what you are and everything like that. And you can do that sober. You can do that without drinking. You can be a basket case and emotionally whacked out and not see things and be delusional. You can't separate truth from sober in AA with 5 years. And the problem is that if you're a sober alcoholic and now you're not drinking, you feel better and you look better and you're having a better time and you're picking up medallions and you got friends and you're sponsoring people, your shit don't stink, you got a sponsor, everything is great, you know what I mean? But but if you're resting on your laurels, if you're at a point, if you're in the third grade, or if you're in the spiritual kindergarten, and God wants you, and you don't move from the spiritual kindergarten, what happens is without knowing it, you slip back into an alcoholic life. What do I mean by an alcoholic life? Where you're not drinking and you're going to meetings, but you're focused on money, property, prestige, and romance. And you hear that in AA all the time, at all the meetings you go to. Oh, my girlfriend left me, my boyfriend left me, let's have a relationship meeting, a meeting on relationships. I lost my car, I lost my job. You see people and all they talk about is material things and they're talking about, and they're focused on the exact same lifestyle they were focused on before they came to AA. And we treat that. It's a symptom of the disease. We put our arms around them, we love them, we say, well, don't drink and go to meetings, and then we say whatever we say, which gets them through the thing to the next day, but they haven't changed their focus. Because their focus is about not drinking. Nothing wrong with not drinking. I got to where I am right now going to meetings like that. You know what I mean? But what happens is this. What God allows you to do when you're off kilter and you're not moving along and doing what the 11th step says, improving your conscious contact, growing up, getting closer to God, doing what this book is all about. Its main point is to allow you to find a relationship with God which will solve your problem. See that your relationship with Him is right, is great event. He will show you to create that fellowship you crave. When you hang around with the same people at the same level and you don't move, what happens is you get troubles. You get unhappy with your sobriety. The wheels start falling off. problems start happening. Resentments, problems with marriages. And you think, because you're goofy and childish and emotionally insensitive, you complain about this shit. You complain about all these problems you're having, not understanding that God is throwing you a microbottom, that he's spanking you, that the only way God can force you to do what you need to do is get you back on your knees again. And so you tough it out, you ignore the God thing, you try to borrow the money from your cousin, you do whatever you have to do in order to manage your life, and the truth of the matter is, you're sober, but you ain't emotionally sober. Because God, you're not worshiping God, you're worshiping the woman, you're worshiping the man, you're worshiping the money, you're worshiping that, and you don't even know you're doing it. You don't even know you're doing it. You just manage it. You know, when you think about it, without the booze, you're just living the same life you lived before you started drinking, talking about the same shit and worrying about the same shit. You know what I mean? Yep. And just going to meetings and hanging around with the same people that are thinking about the same shit. So you don't even know that you even have a problem. Because if you're not scared or worried about the man, the woman, the God, the money, the romance, or whatever it is, your friend Fred is worried about it, or some other guy in the room is worried about it. And you say, well, this is sobriety. And only if somehow at some point in time the bottom, whatever it is, the microbottom you hit, forces you to move from that spot. It's like the old story with the guy with the dog. He's on the porch in Appalachia, and every once in a while the two guys there, and every once in a while the dog goes, ah, ah. He says, what's wrong with your dog? He says, well, right where he's lying, there's a nail sticking out of the thing. And every time he breathes, it hits him. He says, why does he move? He says, well, I guess it doesn't hurt him enough. So you stay in the same situation until it gets so bad that you ask that idiot that you never wanted to talk to before to help you. And then he tells you shit you don't want to hear. You know what I mean? Or you drink again. Or you go to the doctor and they give you Xanax. Or whatever it is. Because the meetings aren't helping it. Because you're going to hang around with the same people doing the same stuff. And you keep on getting these microbottoms. Until one day you get the real deal. And then you know loneliness is few do. And that probably happens in 15 years or 20 years. One guy it happened at 22 years. And that's why you start noticing what Bill Wilson noticed. I've noticed that old-timers, everybody's staying sober, but old-timers are not emotionally balanced. They're not doing well. As a matter of fact, I'm not doing well. I'm not doing well. And if you read the whole thing about that he would talk about, after he wrote that, I'm not going to tell you what the rest of the essay is, you should read it. He says, I was too dependent on AA, on people and everything. I should have been dependent upon God. I missed the deal. And Dr. Bob saw that because the last words he said to Bill before he died is he says, let's not screw this thing up. Let's keep it simple. It's all about God. So this humility thing, this getting to the point where you remember when if you really hit bottom, you remember when you got down, if your sponsor said, do this, you did it, and you didn't argue with him. When he said, get down on your knees every day and said, ask God's help to stay sober, you didn't say, well, why should I do that or anything? You didn't argue. Remember when people would tell you to do shit and you didn't argue with them, you just did it? He'd say, well, clean up the etching. You didn't argue when you remember when like whatever that guy was, I forgot, as Clarence said, he said, I did what I was ordered to do. There were no suggestions. You remember when you had 30 days or 60 days and you want to drink again, and you went up to some guy that you didn't even know or gal and asked him to stay would they help you? And they told you, I want you to do this, I do this, and you actually did it. And then you remember now that you got 5 years, you don't do shit. You don't listen to anybody. You sponsor yourself, and every once in a while you call the sponsor to make sure they're still alive so you don't have to ask anybody else because you don't want to go through that shit again. Remember when you got well? Do you remember when you got well and you weren't drinking and you go to meetings and you could share a meeting and people would clap for you and everything would be okay? And you obviously were sober and you didn't have to bow or do anything, and you got your God and I got my God. Remember that thing? All that falls apart before 20 years. That all falls apart. And you know what happens? It's like a self-cleaning oven. Every 2 or 3 years, the alcohol comes through and just wipes the shit out of all the bullshit. And they go to jail, and they die, and they commit suicide, you know what I mean? Just wipes it out. They go through the room. And then all of a sudden, 20, 30 years goes along, and all those people are gone. And they actually had time. But they wound up because you know something, alcoholism is patient. It's patient. So next time, you know what it says? It says, whenever you're disturbed, no matter what the cause, there's something wrong with you. Next time you're disturbed, next time bad shit is happening to you and you think you're being punished because it's not fair, remember that happens? Just remember, that's God's way of telling you, grow the fuck up. You're on the wrong track. You're not really ready. This world is not going to be pleasant for you. This world is not designed to, to put powder on your bottom and treat you like a baby. You know something? You're going to have problems till the day you die. It's never going to stop. The hits keep on coming.
Amen.
The hits keep on coming. You're either going to grow up or you're going to be a thumb-sucking crybaby. Which means you're going to have to talk to people and ask advice from people that you don't want to talk to. Your days of reading the big book and saying to other people is, well, how do I know what I'm reading? I don't even know what I'm reading unless somebody tells me. And thinking that you're actually reading the big book and understanding are over. They're over. I don't care if you got 10 years or 15 years or 20 years or 40. You're going to have to ask for help. You're going to have to get humble and ask people for help. Listen to people that you don't even like. You're going to have to put this, You're going to have to put this principles before personality shit to work. Don't tell me you understand principles, not personality, and all that sort of stuff. When you get mad at somebody that tells you something that deep down inside you know is the truth, but you just don't fucking like them. You know? You don't like them. You hang out with people that are telling you shit that you hate. Make sure you hang out with the people you hate. You know? Because you hate them, because you know something. You know why you hate them? Because they're telling you shit you don't want to hear. Because you're childish, you're emotionally sensitive, and grandiose. That's it. I'm done with this. I'm done with that.